These are some photographs that I shot with one of the wildest cameras I've ever got to try. For the past few weeks, I've been learning medium format photography, which is new to me. And that with a very special camera that is also new to me, the Hasselblad 907X with the CFV100C. And in this video, I would like to invite you to join me on this journey, a journey of learning a new, kind of weird camera. It's going to be a fun mix of genres. There'll be street photography, outdoor photography, and even a portrait session, which, you know, is not exactly my strength. Let's go. So this story begins a couple months ago when I got an email in my inbox that at first I thought was a scam. As a creator, I sometimes get super lucky and certain opportunities reach me. And sometimes they are so unexpected to me that I just defensively assume that this is probably a scam email. However, I did my due diligence and realized this is for real. I had a bloody email in my inbox from Hasselblad. I wondered why on earth they would contact me, the guy who, when shooting digital, usually shoots with a 16 megapixel Lumix GX80. In any case, they wanted me to try a camera and just learn to use it and make stuff with it. I told them that I'm not really keen on reviewing it, and they said that's fine, we don't want you to review it, we just want you to go out and shoot with it and document the process in a video. And you know, I can't say no to that. So just for transparency, this video is not sponsored by Hasselblad. They aren't paying me to say anything. They just sent me the camera, and I even get to keep it, which is incredible. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and they just want me to go out and shoot with it and document the process. And so that is what I went ahead and did.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, this is it.
Alright, let's check out the camera before heading out to the first shoot. This here is the Hasselblad 907X with the CFV100C. The design is honestly kind of funny. I mean, look, this thin little thing here is the camera body, the 907X, and the bulkier part behind is what they call the medium format digital back. Something really cool is the consistent and compatible design within the Hasselblad ecosystem, which allows for this digital back to be attached to the analog Hasselblad from back in the days. However, I do not have access to that film camera, so I'm sticking to this setup. So I said this is not a review, however I think it is necessary to do at least a brief tour of the camera because, at least for me, this is unlike anything I've ever worked with. Obviously, when you look at this camera, it looks different, kind of like a little box. The back consists of a massive screen that can tilt up like this, and there are buttons, one of which turns on the camera. On the right side, there's a little button which you press to take the camera apart, and there's this sliding door which reveals the battery and the slot for a CF Express card. But as you can see, I don't have one in there. That is because the camera comes with 1 terabyte of internal storage, and to copy the photos off of the camera onto my computer, I need to go to the other side of the camera where there's this little push door which hides the USB-C plug. So this is where you plug the cable into the camera to charge and transfer the photos. 2 more things worth mentioning. Firstly, the shutter button is down here, and around the shutter button is this ring which you can use to dial in your settings. Secondly, this is the only dial on the camera itself. There is one more on the lens which you can turn like an aperture ring. Anyway, I think we've seen enough of the camera for now. Let's actually check out some photographs.
We held on tight, but it felt so long.
Back in March, I just wanted to get to know the camera a bit and took it into the mountains where I got some shots in the fog in the snow. I was really just viewing this as a bit of a test because this camera was so new and different to me. I really needed some time to get used to it. And so unfortunately, I don't actually have much footage from this day.
To lead the way.
Most of the photographs from this day are really not any good, with just a few exceptions. I quite like this one. I like the play with the shapes and textures and how the simple pole stands out as the subject. One more that I like is this one of the 2 kids speeding past me on their skis. by the way, I didn't mention this yet, the lens that I used to shoot everything I'm showing you in this video is the Hasselblad XCD 55mm f2.5, so it's a bit tighter than what I usually shoot. I usually shoot full frame at 35mm, and this lens full frame equivalent is roughly 44mm, I think. So that's not as selective as 50, but still noticeably tighter than what I usually shoot.
I just hope that you want it all.
This one is also not too bad. I love the little shed with the big trees and the foreground next to it, and the forest in the background that slowly fades away in the fog. So with that first test shoot done, I decided to continue my practice, but in a completely different environment. I decided to go downtown during sunset to try some street photography with this camera. Something I enjoyed a lot here is the screen that tilted up 90 degrees, which allowed me to use the camera in a waist-level viewfinder kind of way. This felt a little more inconspicuous than raising the camera to eye level, which allowed for a smoother street photography process without making anyone around me uneasy. Again, as usual, I'm no photography god who shoots only good photos. Most of these are mediocre, not special, but here and there I've got a few that I think are cool. Let me show you. Here's a photograph that I focused on the gentleman in the centre. Even at this distance, there is some noticeable separation between the subject and the background, which I think is really cool. This is thanks to the medium format sensor, but we'll talk more about this later when shooting portraits. I love this shot actually, I think it's pretty cool. There's some neat foreground and background separation, the shiny surface of the wall is interesting, and then on the wall there are three subjects: the bicycle, the shadow, and the guy having a smoke. Here's another photograph that I think turned out pretty cool. I like the contrasty look that mildly anonymizes the subjects by reducing them to a mere shadowy shape. And I enjoy the scattered composition with the three elements, the guy on the left, the guy in the middle, and the car on the right, being spread out somewhat evenly in the frame. Then, before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank the continued sponsor of my channel, Squarespace. When anyone ever asks me how or where to make a website, I always just send them to Squarespace. It is, in my opinion, such a good service that combines easy and intuitive usage with creative freedom. Over the years, they've created this incredible product that allows me to make a website intuitively without any coding knowledge, while still giving me creative freedom to play around with designs and the character of the website. I myself have been using Squarespace for 5 years now, and it's been great and seriously constantly getting better. I use my website to showcase my projects that are either completed or currently still in progress. However, you can actually use Squarespace for so much more than what I do. You can make a simple blog, but you can even make an entire online shop, site for bookings if you're a freelancer, pretty much anything. You can start off with one of the many templates and then customize their layout and design. Alternatively, you can also use their AI tool, which lets you create a website by basically describing it. But whatever you do, you get so much freedom to just change and customize everything so easily thanks to their drag and drop editing system called Fluid Engine. You can head to squarespace.com for a 14-day free trial, and then when you're ready to launch your website, you can go to squarespace.com/Crawford to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. thank you so much to Squarespace for continuously supporting the channel and my work here. I really appreciate it. A part of the unusual ergonomics of this camera, there were mainly two things that were new to me, things I've never experienced. Let's talk about the first while I show you what I was up to with the Hasselblad on my third shoot. This was at the very end of March when winter came back to Innsbruck and we got some fresh snow in the mountains. I decided to put the Hasselblad through some rough conditions and take it with me in a mild snowstorm. So the first point I wanted to talk about regarding things I've never experienced before using this camera is, of course, the insane 100 megapixel sensor. As mentioned at the beginning, I'm used to shooting 16 megapixels and sometimes 24 when I shoot with my Sony. But 100 is something I honestly do not need, but it was very interesting to get to experience it and learn its perks, and I learned to appreciate it, even though I still stand by my opinion that this is generally an unnecessarily high resolution for most of my photography at least. But during my editing process, I actually noticed myself thinking more freely and differently thanks to the increased freedom to crop. And towards the end of my snowstorm shoot, I decided to take a photograph which might be just the thing that a high-resolution camera can be fun to do with. Do you remember in my earlier videos, I used to make many self-portraits, those of me sort of running away from the camera. In the snow, I thought, you know what, let's do one of those again. And so I set up the Hasselblad on a tripod and set the interval shooting mode so that it just continuously shoots every 5 seconds. I ran off into the distance further down the valley and let the camera do its thing.
For you, I'm a ghost. Your shadow at most. My love.
So this is what I got, and I think it's pretty cool. I find that the original crop actually works fine, but the subject is a bit tiny, so there is a lot of room to crop in a lot. Anyway, from here I made my way back to where I started and shot a couple photographs on the way back. While I had my fun taking the Hasselblad with me in this environment, there was still one thing that I really wanted to try out, and that was portraits. And so, at the beginning of April, when my friend Nina came to visit me, who you might have seen in my last video, I thought this is my chance, because Nina actually has modeling experience, so she can compensate for my lack of directing skills.
Salgo a caminar al sol por nuestro lago.
So the second thing that I had never experienced before is the size of the sensor. This camera is a medium format camera, which means the sensor is even bigger than full frame. This in fact was my first time ever shooting medium format. I've never tried it digitally nor on film. I never would have thought that this is how I get to shoot medium formats for the first time. One of the cool things the large sensor enables is a whole new level of shallow depth of field. I'm sure you've seen these cool medium format full body portraits with a blurry background. This is possible with a full frame camera too, especially with slightly longer focal lengths. However, it just looks different in medium format in a very cool way. So that is something I was looking forward to doing on this day.
Yes, we've made it to not the top, but our maximum spot that we can go to. And I think it's about time to get out the Hasselblad and try to get some portraits of Nina.
I have food in between my teeth right now.
That's fine. It's only 100 megapixels, you won't see it.
Siento tu
This is good. Full body shots with the blurry background. I'm kind of looking that way so that you get the nice sunlight, even though it's a bit super harsh, but chin a little further up. I think that's pretty good. Quite like that. Nice. Check.
So here's a decent example of the depth I was talking about. You can see the distance I had to Nina, and yet the background still slowly becomes blurrier the further away the object is, such as the little peak above her head.
Could I have you right on that log? But yeah, there's pretty good. You like in... Ooh, that's so good. Look that way, just like you did. We need the wind hitting your hair. Do that, yes. Hit it. I think I quite like the first one actually. That's what I'm doing, yeah. Could you look back to the sun?
I like this one a lot. I think it looks quite epic actually, and I love the bold and vibrant backdrop that the sky is blessing us with.
Yeah, right, we got it. Oh wait, it's still manual. Let's turn aperture. There we go. That's good.
A little later, we stopped for another quick session here. Basically, we were hiking down the mountain and stopping at a couple spots on the way.
Oh, I love that actually. Let's go with that straight away.
While spending more and more time learning to use this camera, I was slowly getting a hang of it and liking it more and more. I actually wasn't quite convinced at first because it was a little tricky to shoot with, but I think that is simply because it's different to what I'm used to. However, there is one actually kind of nitpicky thing that I dislike on this camera, and that is the customization options of the dials. So there are two dials on this camera. There's this ring around the aperture, which kind of is like an aperture ring, and this here around the shutter is the dial on the body. And, you know, I like to shoot in manual because I like to have full control. And what I was trying to do is set the aperture here so that this literally becomes an aperture ring, and set the shutter speed to this dial. But the camera didn't allow me to do that for some reason. I just couldn't set the shutter speed here. This thing changes the aperture, not the shutter speed, and I just couldn't change that. This is obviously not a big deal, but it was a little disappointing to me at first, and I think it's difficulties of these kind that I was not used to, which just made me a little skeptical at first when using this camera. But here is how I have it set up now, which I think is my personal optimal setup. The camera is not set to manual, but to program. The ISO is set to auto, and this wheel around the shutter changes the aperture, while the lens adjusts the exposure value. So basically, I can just set the aperture as in shooting in aperture priority, and then adjust the exposure by simply adjusting the exposure value setting. That's my current setup. Wait, this is not a review. Let's forget about my opinion. It doesn't matter. Let's get shooting.
No, I actually like it. That's great.
Here's another great example of the depth of field effect on medium format. Nina is really quite small in this composition relative to the entire space in frame, and yet the background has this nice blurry look which in this photo I find really pleasing. Something else that I like in this shot is how the background is just this wall of trees and mountains. I framed this shot in a way that there is no sky, so that in the photo the background just looks like this massive wall that could end right above the frame but could also go much further. The viewer simply doesn't know.
Sorry, I have to have you stand in there just a bit longer. Could you look at that ish? Yeah, that. Ooh, that's good, that's good. Yeah, I'm happy with that one. Okay, now let's get back to focus. You can even turn your body slightly. Yeah, that was a bit much. Yeah, that's good.
These two photographs also turned out pretty cool in my opinion. I like how the sun had to become at least a little low at this point so that I could have it wrap around Nina's face and look flattering, despite it still being very harsh.
Oh, I love the way you stand on the rock actually. Even if you just look slightly this way actually, towards the camera or to the camera, I think that's a nice change, yeah.
This shot is quite similar to the first one I took at this location, but I think this one is worse. I prefer the first shot actually. For me personally, the reason is the background. The first shot feels a bit more intentional and tidy in a way, whereas this one feels a little cluttered and messy, which is something that can absolutely look cool, but in this particular case I think the tidier version simply works better.
Maybe. Maybe. And have the hands go to the front. And when the hands go in, like a bit, yeah, that's nice, that's nice. There we go. I'll come from above. It's kind of nice. Oh no, I liked it. It's good to have the messy hair. That's great.
You like it super messy?
No, it wasn't super messy. It was fine. We're looking around here-ish. Here?
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Nice. I like this one.
I think this photo turned out quite nice. I like the odd angle from above that tilts down to Nina and the snow, and the way she looks at the ground somehow makes for a dramatic looking scene. Also, I quite like the colder editing style I went for here. By the way, all of these photos I edited in Lightroom, and for most of them I actually based the edit off of my own presets. Quick shameless plug, you can get my presets on my Patreon and other stuff such as editing tutorials. I just thought I ought to mention this. There's a link to my Patreon in the description if that is something you're interested in.
That field you were talking about was the field further downwards.
Oh,
So on.
yeah. Is it blinking? Then yes.
Yes.
It's on.
No.
Wait, fisheye.
Like that.
Nina
Hello?
here. Hello. Let's get one more shot of those trees back there. There we go. Right. Let's head down to the next field.
Die Berg ruft ein
Und.
und ich muss ihm folgen. Is that correct?
I think so.
Really?
It doesn't really matter if it's an inconvenience to have it in the photo, then don't do it. I'm gonna wait for you to be like down there and then take the shot.
Last rodeo written on my back window. I've never tried this before. I met
Stay right there, that's great. And I like the candidness of that, so I want to capture that.
I like this photo a lot. I enjoy how it's again simple and splits the photo in 3 elements. The overall landscape, or the canvas, I guess, and the 2 subjects, Nina on the left and the hut in the back on the right. By the way, you might have noticed that there is no blurry background separation here. I did that because I wanted the hut to be somewhat sharp too, and so this photo is shot at f9.5, in case you were wondering what a higher aperture might look like.
See, let's do some close-ups actually, yeah.
Portrait. I feel my calves.
Very dramatic, I love that. Here-ish, yeah. Very serious, but I like it.
Can I see?
So here it is time to show you a neat example of some stronger cropping I did. I was editing this photo, and then I think it was when I just zoomed in somewhere that I realized how this much closer look is actually quite interesting. And that is how I ended up with this photograph. I was fond of the harsh contrasty look of the sunlight and Nina's dramatic facial expression, which I thought might look really good in black and white. And so this is what I ended up with, which I like a lot. Here's the original full uncropped frame. I decided to go with a 1x1 square crop with a strong emphasis on the dark side of Nina's face and the background taking up almost half of the frame, and placing her eye in this somewhat unconventional spot that for some reason just felt right. It creates some tension, I find, because it's so close to the edge, which I thought was cool. Of course, photography is super subjective, so I totally understand if you think this is shit, but I personally like it a lot.
That you shoot this way? That's too harsh.
Let's try the low angle, I quite like that. Oh, that's actually nice. Ooh. We're onto something. I really like this.
It was getting late and we really needed to get going, but the lighting was so pretty, so it was just too tempting to shoot a bit more. But here are the last 2 photos to end of the day. This photograph that Nina took of me, thank you, and this is one of the last shots that I got of Nina heading off into the distance to make her way down the mountain. I then hastily ran after her to catch up. And that concludes my journey into digital medium format photography with the Hasselblad so far. It's been such an interesting process, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. So thank you so much to Hasselblad, and thank you again to Nina for modelling for me again. I hope I get to learn more in this field in the future. My current conclusion is that I most enjoyed this camera for the portrait session with Nina actually. So far, for me, this camera seems to be the best in that kind of photography, so maybe I'll explore more of that sometime. Anyway, for today, that is enough, and I hope you enjoyed coming along on this journey. Before saying goodbye, I would like to say a massive thank you to the lovely people supporting me and my work on Patreon. Thank you so much to each one of you. If you're interested in Lightroom presets, tutorials and stuff like that, you can check out my page via the link in the description. Also, I have a print shop by the way, in case that is of interest to you. With that said, I hope to see you again soon. Until then, goodbye.